Hey you guys, so let's address popping hips when we do core movements where we're bringing the legs away from the body. So oftentimes when we do that, we start hearing that clicking and that popping, and while it's not necessarily going to harm your body, it definitely is an indication that things aren't moving quite the way they should, and we want to get the most out of the movement and get our bodies moving functionally the way they should. So let's work on that. So a couple of things: tight hip flexors, overcompensating with the quads, and not using the pelvic floor are all things that contribute to that. So first thing is, before you do that, before you're doing that kind of core movement, stretch out the hip flexors. You can do that in some low lunges, knee on the floor. Oh, my knee popped, but not my hips. And bringing the hips down and stretching the hip flexors, pushing the hips forward, nice and upright with your torso. So give those a good stretch. You can definitely use the roller as well to help out with tight hip flexors before you start your core workout. Okay, once we get going in the core workout, what tends to happen is overcompensating with the top quads up here, okay? So, so when you think about that, when you're doing these, you know, using the hip flexors and using the quads too much instead of the core where we want it. So I'm sure you can imagine that right away, thinking about, oh my gosh, yes, I definitely get tight in these areas, helping, right? And I always tell people, you know, that's just your body being very smart, right? When we're building these muscles, especially the lower abdominals, our body is smart, and it's always going to take the path of least resistance. So it's going to use these bigger muscles that are stronger, right? But we're gonna train it more effectively. So use the pelvic floor in these exercises. And I know we're used to Kegels, and we think about lifting, and that's great. So lift, and I always tell people that in my classes when we start core exercises, to lift the pelvic floor, because if you think about crunching and bearing down, obviously that's not what we want. So lift the pelvic floor first and then contract the abdominals. But more than just lifting, I want you to use, I want you to think about lifting the tailbone into the pubic bone. So it's almost like this little tuck, and then you're also lifting the pelvic floor. Once you've got that and you're focusing on that, then start the movement, and again, thinking about relaxing more in these areas and using your core as you're using lifting and contracting your pelvic floor. Then go ahead and start the circular movements, and it's going to take some focus. So as you get going, retraining your body, I would make smaller circles. So go ahead and make smaller circles as you're really focusing on the pelvic floor lift and not using so much the quads and the hip flexors. And also, when we do the one leg ones, don't be afraid to put the lower leg down. And again, ultra focus on the muscles that you want to be using here. I would rather you just totally ultra focus on right where you want it than be doing big circles and using the wrong muscles, right? So never be afraid to modify and really focus on what you want to be using. So I hope those tips help. Let me know if you find a bit of relief with those. Thank you guys.